Hi there. So yeah, this is a video that I've been thinking about for a long time to make it, and yet I never did. It's about sacred geometry and how it relates to paradigm and also our current paradigm shift. And so yeah, video is like a generalized story directed to many people, and I haven't made it before because of the all-encompassing subject matter, which I always felt were work better if I speak to it about it to an individual, because then I can relate it to their own experience, their own life, their own specialties. But yeah, I feel it's also missing that there's a video that I can just show people that gives a more generalized view. So, well, here we go. Um, Sacred geometry, firstly, is yeah, it's called sacred. Why is it sacred? What makes geometry sacred? And so the sacred part, the way I see it, is how it relates to the process of creation. And so yeah, there's many ways I can go with this, but so just what pops up now with relates is like how, for instance, in the Bible, it's spoken about how the Word of God, which is written in all capitals, and that Word of God, which many people relate to sound and frequency and vibration, which does make a lot of sense. However, the Word of God is a translation in English, which is coming from the original Greek story, in which the Word of God was the Logos. And the Logos is not really about sound or words or vibrations of words, however it does relate, but the Logos also has to do with logics and logical structure that is responsible for creation. And so in that sense, the Logos and sacred geometry have a lot to do with each other. And I'd like to explain how and why in this story. And so, yes, I think I will start where much started for me, which is when I was 9 years old. We went to Botswana with my father. My father was a hydrogeologist, my mother a biologist, and so it's kind of my background also. And so my father was working as a hydrogeologist, got a contract in Botswana in Africa, next to South Africa. And then we were just there, and then before we went to our real house, so we went to this, I lived there, we lived there, our family lived there for 2.5 years. When I was 9, we came there. And then before we went to the real house, we went to this hotel, and then there was a swimming pool in the hotel, and then I couldn't swim yet. And but I had some experience of swimming underwater, which I could do, so I could move underwater. And I knew there was a shallow end and a deep end in the swimming pool. And so then I thought, oh, I can dive into the deep end, and then underwater swim to the shallow end, and then I can touch my feet can touch the ground. So that was my plan. I dove in, and I went wrong, got lost, don't know what happened, but anyway, I didn't end up on the shallow end. And then I couldn't get up, and I drowned. There was a moment of panic, and then the panic passed, and then I had this near-death experience, which was the most beautiful experience I ever had, and also simultaneously unexplainable. And so that set me on a certain journey from that moment onwards, in which my parents, that were both quite scientifically minded, and that kind of both turned their back to religion, they were not really able to put this in context for me, and so I started searching from then on to explanations that could word what I couldn't word. And so although the experience was very important and very beautiful, I couldn't find the words to express it. And so to put it in context, I started searching for anything that could help me do that. And that set me on a journey of all the mystics of all the religions, you could say, the founders of religions in the world, all based initially on these mystics that have some kind of an ecstatic, direct experience of something transcendental, which they then explain in their ways, and then religions are based on their explanations of that. And in these accounts of these mystics, I recognized my experience there. And also, by the way, people that would describe psychedelic experiences already on this young age were also resonating with what I had experienced, that I had trouble expressing what it was exactly that I had experienced. And so that's just the start of this story and of my story, you could say. And in this I have tried to understand better and better through the years, and I feel I have managed to understand. And the way I now give words to it, how I explain it, how I understand it, is that it was an experience of unity. And so unity is a word we all know, but if you think about it longer and deeper, it's actually more complicated than the superficial idea you might have about it, that unity is just unity. But so if you have like an absolute unity, an all-encompassing unity that excludes nothing, then it defies all explanations, definitions, and language. Why? Because all our understandings are based on the differences between this and that. And so by comparing the differences between certain aspects within that unity of the one to the other, we can now get an understanding and a definition of these different aspects. But imagine that all these aspects are in reality all unified, then how can you compare this to that if this and that are seamlessly entwined? And so this is the way how I now understand that experience that I had was an experience of that unity, and it is this unity, the way I now understand this, it is this unity that we are all born from and that we all return to after our experience of life. And our experience of life is an experience based on the illusion of division from that unity. And so we are born from that unity into the world of illusion and division, and say Maya. Anyway, so this starts with being I call it detached from this unity by developing your sense of self, which is something that also happens as a trajectory that babies also go through as they turn into small children and adults eventually. And so this has also to do something with in the brain, the synapses of these nerve cells that are at the start all connected, like the fingers my hands, and so there's synapses and synapses everywhere, and they're all connecting with each other, and this gives this experience also of unity. And so in that sense, the brain is still in this pristine, unified state of understanding, but actually not really understanding the world we are born into, because of this lack of a division. And so it's this division that is the learning process where these synapses that are connected initially all get the bridges get interfered with, and that's the learning process. So this is just in general a bit about how our understanding of the world, our experience of the world, our experience of reality is based on this illusion of division. And so in our life onwards, after you have this phase also with babies that when they are, I think around 2 years old or something, then they have things called the anal retentive stage, where they are now saying no to everything. No, 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 no this, no that, no this, no that. Everything is no. And this is when they develop their sense of self as it is detached from the unity they were feeling and were actually also part of, and in reality always are part of, because it's an illusion of division. And so in reality we never leave that unity. It's only through the illusion of division that we leave it. However, in this phase of the baby, it starts saying no to everything, and that's how it's now developing this sense of self that can have free will and decisions based on its own free will that change the experience the child is having. And so this is all to do with this illusion of division, and how these divisions are at the base of our paradigm, our worldview, our understanding of the world, our reality. And so this in sacred geometry is represented by the perfect sphere, which represents this absolute unity, which also represents the absolute truth. And in that also, that the absolute truth is absolute unity. And therefore all divisions are illusory. However, as it is an absolute unity, it is all inclusive, and so also the illusion of divisions are encapsulated within that absolute unity. And so these are all the possibilities that exist within it. And so in that, on the level of sacred geometry, this absolute truth of absolute unity is represented by the perfect sphere. And the perfect sphere doesn't exist in reality, because everything is always distorted from it. And so if you look in the fine details, you will always find distortions of this perfect sphere. So this perfect sphere only exists in our minds, or you could say in platonic space, where all abstract shapes live according to Platonists or Pythagoreans. And so in this, on the level of sacred geometry, this perfect sphere is that unity, represents that unity that needs to be subdivided to work with it. And so in that, there was, at the start of the age of Pisces, which are these astrological ages that last 2,160 years each, and these are the 12 signs of the zodiac, which the zodiac is this belt of star constellations as we see them from Earth, around the Earth, and this area of stars around the Earth as we see them from Earth has been subdivided into 12 segments that have all been called after one of the zodiac signs. And so there's Lion, Leo, and Capricorn, and Pisces, and all this. And so now we're entering spring, which is 0 degrees over Grand Aries, and so that's the start of the cycle. And so on the 21st of March, actually. And so that's the equinox, the spring equinox, when the day and the night are equally long. And so yeah, let me also explain this a little bit then. And so that's how our seasons are formed by the axis of the Earth has a certain angle with the sun, and over the course of one day, 24 hours, the Earth spins around this axis, and over the course of 1 year, the Earth spins around the sun. And because of the angle of this axis that the Earth spins around in 24 hours, that angle determines the seasons. And so at the time of, let's say, at the spring equinox, if we're speaking about that, that is when it is like this, and so the north and the south part of the Earth are equally angled with the sun. But here it's the north that is closer to the sun and the south that is far from the sun. Here it's again equally angled with the sun, and here it is the south that is closer to the sun, and the north that's far from the sun. So this is the winter time in the north and the summertime in the south. This is the spring equinox, the summertime in the north and the winter time in the south, and this is the fall equinox. And so this is very relevant also to the story about the ages, because this axis is not permanently in this exact angle to the sun, because this axis itself has a spin which goes like this, and that causes the axis to have a different angle with the sun, and one full cycle like this, as it during all the years this axis is making a full turn, and a full turn takes 26,000 years for an entire turn to go like this. And these 26,000 years have been divided into 12 segments, and as it points towards one of the zodiac signs, these 12 segments have been named after the zodiac signs. And so in this manner, the age of Pisces was the age that is just ending now, and we're now entering the age of Aquarius. And you can imagine that as our sun is the primary energy source for life on Earth, if this axis changes, which determines the seasons, then all life on Earth changes. And so that's how these 12 ages of zodiac sign ages that each last 2,160 years, times 12 is the 26,000 years. And so as this angle changes, life on Earth changes, and therefore also the paradigm changes. And so in this is the larger context in time where we can now situate this paradigm that was based on the Platonic solids as they were introduced by Pythagoras at the start of the age of Pisces. And so this, to me, is no coincidence that as our paradigm is on its most fundamental level based on this sacred geometry, as the paradigm changes, the sacred geometry changes upon which this paradigm is based. And so as we enter a new age, that new paradigm goes with this new age, there's also another aspect, another type of sacred geometry that this age, the paradigm of this age, is based on. And so, in all that, Pythagoras, at the very start of the age of Pisces, introduced the 5 Platonic solids. They're called Platonic, based on Plato, but actually they were introduced by Pythagoras. Pythagoras, which his name is Python, it comes from Pythos, which is this serpent, which is also relevant. I'll get to that later, I think. And these 5 Platonic solids, what do? They divide this perfect sphere into equal segments that each have a certain angle to each other, and they are of equal length. And so these 5 Platonic solids are 5 different geometries that divide this perfect sphere into equal segments so we can work with it. This illusion of division that is necessary for understanding and working with this unity that we are part of. And so I just brought some examples. I don't have many, but just some examples to give a bit of an idea. This is a bit distorted because it doesn't have straight lines. It should have straight lines if we're talking about the true Platonic solids. But this is like the tetraeder, if it had straight lines. And so the tetraeder is the lowest frequency division of the perfect sphere, where equal length segments divide this perfect sphere, and it's called a tetraeder because tetra means 4 and eder means sides, and so it has 4 sides. 1, 2, 3. Oh, 1, 2, 3, and 1 on the bottom. And so it has 4 sides. And what is very relevant to all these Platonic solids is that their corner points, all touch the perfect sphere around it. And so that's how, in between those corner points, there are straight lines that you can project within that perfect sphere to divide that perfect sphere into equal segments. So that's what these Platonic solids do. I have one more example. This is another Platonic solid. This is the dodecahedron, or the dodecahedron, and it has now 12 sides. And in this case, in the other case, they were triangles. In this case, they are pentagons, and so it has 12 pentagons that are subdividing this perfect sphere, and again, of course, all the corner points are touching this perfect sphere, and in between those corner points there are these straight lines that subdivide this perfect sphere into equal segments. And this allows us again to work with that perfect sphere. And so it has 12 planes now, 12 sides, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then one under, and then on top, and so that's 10 plus 2 is 12. So dodecahedron, 12 sides. So this is another example of one of those 5 platonic solids. There's one higher frequency division, which is the icosahedron. It is the 20-sided, and now it has 20 triangles. You can imagine maybe if you top off the corner points. So these corner points, they come from 3 sides to the corner every time, and if you would cut off that corner point, then you would have a triangle. And if you do that with every corner point, then you transform this dodecahedron with its 12 sides into an icosahedron with 20 triangles, because there's 20 points that touch the sphere in this case. Anyway, and so this is just a bit of explanation about the platonic solids. And so these platonic solids were necessary to subdivide the perfect sphere, which represents the absolute truth of absolute unity, into segments, the illusion of division, and so now we can work with them. And so these shapes were at the base of our understanding of the world now. But they were a certain type of distortion from the absolute truth of the perfect sphere. And so these were straight-lined, sharp-cornered shapes that approached the perfect sphere in ever higher frequency divisions. And within that, and so let me just go through them shortly. So there's the tetrahedra that I just showed in the beginning, and so that's the lowest frequency division. Then comes the hexahedra, which is the cube. We all know that one. It has now 6 sides, so 4 going around, 1 on top, 1 on the bottom, that's 6. Then comes the octahedra, that is looking like a double pyramid, but now this is like a pyramid with a triangle base, but now the normal pyramid as we know it from Egypt, which has a square base, and 2 of those pyramids with their bases touching leaves you with 8 triangles, 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom, and so that makes again a shape altogether in which all the corner points touch the perfect sphere. And so this is another way of subdividing the perfect sphere, now in a slightly higher frequency division than the cube. And so that's the 3rd one. Then comes the 4th one, which is this dodecahedron that I just showed. And then comes the 5th one, which is the icosahedra with the 20 triangles that I explained. So these are the 5 frequency divisions. In that, the pyramid plays a specifically important role for our paradigm. Firstly, these are, as I was saying, straight-lined, sharp-cornered approaches to the perfect sphere. And the straight line and the sharp corner in sacred geometry, which is like a universal language, in sacred geometry, the straight line and sharp corner represent the masculine, while the curved line represents the feminine. And so that also meant that our paradigm, as it was based on this masculine distortion of the platonic solids, our paradigm was also a masculine dominated paradigm for the past 2000 and some years. And within that, the pyramid was the most prominent of structures, that was most, I call it most generally known to all people, and it is the way people have seen how things are organized or can be organized, or should be organized, or in reality are always organized. And so the pyramid represents in the also hierarchy, and so many people believe that this hierarchy is an intrinsic part of reality or of nature, and so they project this paradigm into nature, and they look at nature and they say, oh, then in that case the lion is the king of the jungle, and so now this feudal system, which is also this pyramid-based system, is not projected within nature, but in reality, the way I see it, there are no kings in the jungle, and it's all one harmonic, integrated unity of biodiversity, where the lion is not a king that decides and eats everyone and everything and keeps on eating whatever he wants. No, he hunts. He's only, I think, 10 or 20% of the cases successful in his hunts. And then the weakest of the pack are selected, which now keeps the strongest to survive and adapt. A small bacterial infection can kill the lion, especially when his resistance is low, when he hasn't been eating, when the environment wasn't providing for him, and so it's all unified. And so in that sense, saying there's any kings in there is, the way I see it, just a way of having this paradigm at the base of our understanding, which we now use to dissect and understand and define our reality. And so in that, this pyramid has various aspects that are part of it, and so one of it is also the concentration of and centralization of power and wealth in the top. It's also the Ponzi scheme, or the pyramid scheme, where you always need to have more people to join at the base to keep the system going, in which everything, all the wealth is transferred ever more to the top. And so the way I see it, we are currently at the end of that paradigm, and at the end of the possibilities also of this pyramid scheme to continue any further. And so we are also, because we're at the end of it, at the height of the distance between the top and the base. And so we are at the point where the most amount of people have joined the base, and no more people can join it at the base. And so also colonialism is part of this paradigm, and so where you always need to have more territory, or capitalism, where you always need to have more profits, and for more profits you need more clients, and so you need to expand in your territory kind of again of capitalism, and so once everybody is in this world of capitalism, it can't expand any further. Everybody already has their car and their blender and whatever, and so that's when this system can't continue. Also based on the exploitation of resources, of materials that are needed for this consumerism, which is always needing to consume more and produce more. And so these are all infinite expansion based model. All these aspects of colonialism, feudalism with the king owning the land, capitalism, consumerism, these are all infinite expansion based models based on, in sacred geometry, the pyramid that always needs to expand its base, and where all the wealth and power is concentrated and centralized. And so we are now at the point where the top and the base are having the greatest distance from each other. The greatest amount of wealth is concentrated in top in relation to the amount of wealth that people in the base of the pyramid have. And so this is the maximum. At some point this can't expand any further, and that is when it collapses. Within sacred geometry, as I was explaining, the pyramid is actually half of the true shape, which is the octahedron, where two pyramids are touching base. And so, in reality, this infinite expansion-based model at some point has reached its maximum, and then it returns, which is the downward pyramid. But if your system is based on infinite expansion that always has a larger base, then as soon as we go in the other direction, this system that is based on that infinite expansion-based model collapses. And so I believe this is the period we are in now. And so this is the end of, happens to coincide with the end of the age of Pisces and also the start of the age of Aquarius. And so we are in transition from one age to the next age, and from one paradigm to the next paradigm. And so in this paradigm shift, we're moving from these Platonic solids-based geometries, geometry, which was good for the time being. It was necessary to bring us where we are at. But so now we have reached the end of that paradigm, and now we are entering a new paradigm. And so this is the one that is now not having a future for itself, and definitely not a good future, and so it's only getting worse. And so while the one is collapsing, the other is emerging. And so the one that's emerging is what I call the power flower geometry, the paradigm based on the power flower geometry, or actually more accurately, power flower. It's a flow of power. And so I did bring a few things that can show a bit what I'm talking about. And so this is one I made here. I bought here this land, which is used to be a clay quarry, and I went to this ceramic course of people that came to visit here to see where the clay was coming from, or used to come from. And then I was invited to join them in their ceramic class, and then I made this thing. And so let me see if I can show it more up close. I hope it can be seen what I'm talking about. And so here you see one example of the infinite possibilities that this power flower geometry has. And so this, if you can imagine, can be a sphere also. And so now I made it like this, but you can imagine that you make this contract further, and then you have a sphere that has this type of geometry. And this geometry, it is infinite cycles that go round and round and round and round. It never stops. And so it's a closed loop circuit. It's recycling. It's self-sustaining. It doesn't have any straight lines or those sharp corners in that manner. They're all like this. And so it's a whole new type of sacred geometry, and it's still approaching the sphere. If you can imagine that it would be more spherical. It is the other with straight lines and sharp corners is very rigid. This one is more flexible. It's more dynamic, and it is as opposed to the infinite expansion-based model that always needs more and more and more. This is the closed loop model of the closed circuit, self-sustaining. And so this is at the base of a whole new paradigm, yet it still approaches the perfect sphere. It is still also a distortion of the perfect sphere, because it is not the perfect sphere. It approaches it, and with these round cycles, it divides the perfect sphere in these lines, and these lines can have infinite patterns, and in that this particular pattern is 5 based. As you can see, it has a pentagon at the center, and then it has 5 divisions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 divisions, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it returns 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so it keeps doing that, and that means that it is cycling around the center 7 times before the serpent bites its tail. And so this also has to do with the Ouroboros serpent, which is a mythological creature that is very ancient, which is this closed loop of life, and where the serpent bites its tail and eats its tail and is renewing itself and represents all of life, where life feeds on life in a closed loop circuit. It's also about infinity. And so, yeah, so just to continue a little bit about this, and so this is now 5 based and 7 spins around the center, but it can be any based here. This 5 can be 4, can be 3, can be 2, can be 12, can be 100, can be any type of number instead of 5 based. And also this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, these 7 spins around the center can also be any type of number. And so this is infinite possibilities of the shape at the base of it, and infinite possibilities at the number of spins around the center. So this is a little bit about that geometry. Yeah, so here I have something else. This is the Mongolian knot. This Mongolian knot, it is an ancient symbol from Mongolia, where you see it never ends also, and so it is this infinite knot, like a closed loop, and it's interwoven also. And this is the Mongolians, also the Celtic weaving. They have the trefoil with the 3 that are going like this. This is also a power flower geometry. This is actually the power flower 3 divided by 2 equals O. And the one I just showed is the power flower 5 divided by 7 equals O. Equals O means makes one closed loop. And so it can also make several closed loops. And so this is an example of several closed loops. You see here there are different colors. Every closed loop has a different color. And this is how you can make the power flower geometry out of several closed loops. And so this would be then not equals O, but equals, what is it, 7 times O. This one has, I think, 7 colors. And so, yeah, these are just some examples. And so, so we're talking now about the Mongolian, the Celtic, the Ouroboros, which is I'm not sure, even a Etruscan, it's very old, Phoenician, I think it's older. And so, yes, many different cultures. And so this paradigm shift that we're entering, we are now moving into a paradigm that is based on a certain type of sacred geometry, which it's not the first time. And so also within this paradigm, the understanding of that things are cyclical comes with it. And so that also means that it is not the first time that we've entered into a paradigm based on this cyclical sacred geometry. And in the cyclical sacred geometries, it's also relevant to me that the serpent has always played an important role. All through all mythology and religions, the serpent has always played an important role. But the cultures that were having venerating the serpent or having this serpent as a deity having an important function, these cultures were all of this recycling, closed loop, agricultural based cultures, while this pyramid based centralization of power, infinite expansion based model were always the soldier based cultures, and also more city. And so cities and soldiers, they go well together because a city cannot sustain itself and so needs food coming from outside of the city. Why would anyone bring food to that city? Because there's some kind of a system of oppression where there are people working to make that food that are now in some kind of way forced to produce food for the people living in the city. And so the city culture and the soldier culture, they are closely related. And this soldier culture is also colonialism and expansion, infinite expansion based model. All these things have to do with each other, while the closed loop and the serpent based venerating cultures were these agricultural self-sustainable cultures that did not need to conquer other people because they were closed loop, self-sustaining. And so this is also a way to understand history through this sacred geometry at the base of the paradigms. Just let me see. I just have some other examples that I thought is funny. This grail thing, but then actually you see here this pattern is also this way of this power flower pattern, where you have these cycles all going ding, 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 ding. And also something funny is the lotus. The lotus shape also has a lot of relevance. So here you see this lotus shape, and there you see these steps going. And so this is this pattern of this power flower based pattern, which is also happening in, where is it? Oh yeah, there it is. The pine cone. And so the pine cone, this is a natural pattern where you can see, or maybe better on this side, you see these spirals going towards the center in one direction, and then there are other spirals going towards the center in the other direction. And so these are all these power flower based patterns. However, in nature, the number of spirals going towards the center from the, what is it, the right to the left, or for the left to the right, for you, from left to the right to the center, are a different number than the spirals going from the right to the left in nature. And so these two numbers, the number of spirals going one way versus the other, are always Fibonacci sequence numbers. And so then there's like 8 going one direction and then 13 going in the other direction. And if you divide those sequential Fibonacci numbers, they come to the golden mean ratio, or phi ratio, which which is all this sacred geometry, and which is also interesting and funny to me, is that, as I just showed the lotus, and so the lotus here is like this lotus shape, but if you can see the lotus shape of this lotus flower, is also what's going on the scales of the serpent. You see these scales, and you see this lotus flower, and so you can see how they are actually, if you would extend this lotus flower into like a tube, you get this power flower pattern as the scales on the dragon or the serpent, which is relevant to me too. Another thing that is interesting and relevant, let me first just show this, then I've showed all the things. This is where my original inspiration of this power flower geometry came from. This is a power ball. You can spin it like it's a gyroscope. So a gyroscope, that means it's two axes of spin in relation to each other, and then you can use that to accelerate movement. And this, if you do it right, you can just a bit distracted now, so it's not working so well, but you can make it spin 5,000 rounds per minute, so very fast. And if you do that, you get like this G-force that is very heavy. Let me see if I can get it to spin, just to illustrate a little bit. You can already hear it accelerating. I don't want to get into it too much. Anyway, this will spin then every time faster and faster, and then you get this G-force, and it becomes very heavy. And then that was always magical to me. And then during a psychedelic experience, I thought of this, and then I would spin energy in that manner. Oh, I'm getting a visitor. I have to stop now. So let me just stop, and then I continue later. Okay, so see if I can continue where I left off. So about the transition, the paradigm shift between the paradigm based on the metallic solids and the paradigm that's now re-emerging, the circular based paradigm based on the power flow geometry. And so one very interesting aspect in this story to me is that if I speak to people about sacred geometry, then today, in this period, these years that I've been studying this all, and working with it, and building with it, if I speak about sacred geometry, then one thing that people know, if they know anything about sacred geometry, is usually the flower of life geometry. And so it's almost by some people equal to each other. Sacred geometry is the flower of life, as if there is only flower of life that is representing sacred geometry. And so to me, that's very relevant in this story of transition. Why? Because the flower of life is this pattern that probably seen it if you're interested in this video. It has these overlapping circles in which the circumference of the one circle overlaps the center of the other, and then 6 circles all do this from 6 sides. It's overlapping this center, and that is actually the seed of life. If you do that one time, you have the seed of life, but you can repeat this pattern where now one circle that is overlapping the other is also again overlapped by another circle around it, and so now you can expand this pattern, which is a triangle or hexagonal based pattern, two-dimensional pattern. And this flower of life pattern is actually a power flower geometry. It's one, or more specifically the seed of life, which is within the flower of life, the seed of life in which 6 circles overlap each other and cross in the center. This seed of life at the base of the flower of life is a power flower geometry. It is one of the infinite amount of possible power flower geometries. It is, as I can define every one of them, within the power flower definition, I would call it the power flower 6 divided by 6 equals 6 times O. 6 times O because it is 6 closed loops, so it's not one continuous closed loop in which the serpent bites its tail one time, but there are 6 closed loops, 6 circles that are overlapping in the center. In that there are 3 families of power flowers, to just go a little bit deeper into that, in which there is an infinite family of power flowers in which the loops overlap the center. So if the center is here, they cross over the center every time they go from outside to the center. They overlap the center point. Then there are, and those are the positive, I call them the positive power flowers, because the star is like a bulging star that it forms. It forms a star-based pattern, and the star is bulging, as if it's giving, positive. And then there are the negative power flowers, where now the loops come towards the center, but they never reach the center. And so you can imagine like this, 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 like this. So that as they go from the outside towards the inside, they never reach the center point, and then they go back again towards the outside. And so this is making a hollow star, make it sucking. And so these are the negative power flowers. And then there are the neutral power flowers. Those are the ones in which the cycles exactly cross over the center point. They go to the center point, and as soon as they reach the center point, they go out again. And these, the seed of life is one of the neutral power flowers in which the loops are exactly on the center point. Anyway, so this is a bit of background about the geometry of the power flower geometries, in which the flower of life, or actually the seed of life, is one of the infinite possibilities of the power flower geometry. But it's not just any of the infinite possibilities, it happens to be the one power flower geometry which within its structure contains the 5 platonic solids. And so this is very significant to me, because as we are now in this period of transition, in the paradigm shift, where we are transitioning from the platonic solid based paradigm into the power flower based paradigm, and in this transition period, the one sacred geometry that is known to most people happens to be the one power flower geometry, which represents this new paradigm that is emerging. This little birdie, it's a robin, he always comes to me. This this one particular power flower geometry beholds these 5 platonic solids within its structure, because if you connect the points, the cross points of the flower of life, you can trace all 5 platonic solids that I explained before, the tetrahedra with the 4 triangles, the hexahedra with the cube with the 6 squares, the dodecahedra with the 12 pentagons, all those. You can draw these 5 platonic solids two-dimensionally and make two-dimensional drawings, two-dimensional representations of these 5 three-dimensional platonic solids. And if you draw these 5 platonic solids two-dimensionally, you can do that by connecting the dots of the flower of life. And so this image that you then get, if you would connect all those dots with straight lines, and you draw all those 5 platonic solids one over the other, then you get a specific shape that is known as a Metatron's cube. And so this Metatron's cube, which contains the 5 platonic solids, two-dimensional representation of the 5 platonic solids, this Metatron's cube exists within the flower of life. And so the flower of life is the perfect sacred geometry that represents the transition from the platonic solid-based sacred geometry to the power flower-based sacred geometry. Because it is part of the infinite family of power flower geometries. However, it contains within it the 5 platonic solids. And so this is a very significant aspect that I thought I should still mention. And another thing that I just thought about that I hadn't I touched upon it, but I didn't explain much more about it, how Pythagoras is called Pythagoras after this Pythos. And Pythos is the name of this serpent that was venerated by the culture that came before the Greek culture that was dominating them after, that conquered them. And so it's the culture of the conquering Greek culture that Plato and Pythagoras all belong to, which was conquering this agriculture. And so the Athenian, the Greek culture was very much a soldier city-based culture. And so they were conquering through soldiers other lands, other tribes, other cultures, and they lived in cities where they were not concerned with growing their own food, closed-loop self-sustainability, but they needed to expand their territory of colonizing other cultures. And so in that story, this Greek culture that had Pythagoras and Plato and all them was conquering a more ancient culture that was living there, that was venerating this serpent. And the serpent was living underground, as I said, and it was called Pythos. And so Pythagoras is called after that. But in that, to me, is also quite relevant how the Kundalini serpent is part of this story too. And so the Kundalini, I don't know how much I should go into this, but this is a creative energy that can be a transmuted sexual energy that can have higher levels of expression and which can reach to the higher chakra levels of expression, the also enlightenment. And so I believe that perhaps this also plays a role in Pythagoras being called Pythagoras and being the source of this knowledge of these platonic solids. It's kind of a different tangent, and so I won't go too far into that now. But what I wanted to say mostly is that Pythagoras was called after this serpent, which is this serpent-based culture, which was preceding the culture that Pythagoras was part of, and they were this serpent-venerating culture. And the story goes in the mythology of the Greeks that I think it was Apollo. Was it Apollo that killed the sun god? Killed this serpent, and so now he was dead and he was underground, and his rotting body was now, the fumes of the rotting body were coming out in Delphi. And then there was this the navel of the world was in Delphi, the center of the world, they were saying, in Delphi, and there was this cave, and in the cave there was this hole where they said that the fumes of the rotting corpse of this serpent were coming out, and then there was the oracle of Delphi, which was then breathing in these the fumes of the serpent, and then could speak truth and could predict the future, and this was the oracle of Delphi. Anyway, so this is just a little bit of context about how this element of the infinite expansion-based model, the pyramid-based model, the platonic solid-based paradigm, is part of this conquering culture, and the preceding culture that was serpent venerating was this self-sustainable agricultural based culture. And so part of that is also, which is interesting, is that Alexander the Great was also part of this infinite expansion based model, the pyramid based model, hierarchy based model, exploitation, city soldier culture model, unsustainable also by definition, because there is a limit within the confines of Earth for the infinite expansion based model to expand. And so Alexander the Great was this great conqueror that conquered half the world or something like that. And there's this interesting story, very interesting to me within this context, where there was this Gordian knot. And so what I just showed, the power flower geometry, is this closed loop interwoven structure that is actually a knot. It's a knot that can never be untied. Why not? Because it is a closed loop. And so if it's a closed loop, there are no loose ends, and so that means you can't untie this knot that is interwoven before the serpent bites its tail. And so this is a knot that can never be untied. And so that is actually what is the Gordian knot. And so the Gordian knot was this famous knot, and nobody knows exactly what it looked like, but it was a knot that could never be untied. And so I can only imagine it as a power flower geometry. knot where the serpent bites its tail. And so there's a story about when Alexander the Great was still a boy, and there was this knot there somewhere, and then Alexander the Great, and this is where the saying comes from, cut the knot to make a decision, because if something is infinite you can never make any decision. And so to just cut the knot is a way to divide, and it's a way to conquer through division, divide and conquer reality also. And Alexander the Great was aggravated by the fact that this knot could not be untied, and so then he said, I know how to untie it. He pulled out his sword and cut through the knot. And so this Gordian knot, this power flower geometry as I can only imagine it, of this continuous closed loop of the serpent biting his own tail, so basically representing this serpent, this agricultural cultures that are self-sustainable, recycling, closed loop, was now conquered by Alexander the Great, who cut through the knot. And so there's this confrontation of these two paradigms in that story to me. And then there was some seer who saw Alexander the Great as a boy cutting through this knot, and from that action this seer extrapolated a vision where he now recognized in that boy, this boy will conquer the world. And so it was I call it a premonition. You could predict the future. I hear someone said something. I don't know, I heard something funny. And so, yeah. So this another interesting story about the confrontation of the serpent-based, self-sustainable, agricultural, serpent-venerating cultures and the infinite expansion-based, colonial-based paradigm. So yeah, maybe this is what I should add to the story that was just unbroken and was actually a bit distracting. So I think this is the end of this video then. Okay, thank you for listening if you came all the way until here. And so I hope you enjoyed and understand. Oh yeah, I just want to add one more little thing that I thought was still also missing and relevant, is that I have understood this sacred geometry, and this gives me some kind of general understanding about this transition that we're in, but this transition is inescapable. One paradigm is ending, one which is an unsustainable paradigm, and a more sustainable paradigm is re-emerging. Cyclical paradigm is re-emerging, and the pyramid-based paradigm is collapsing and ending. And there's nothing I can do about that. This is not my doing, this is nobody's doing. This, as I was saying, has to do with the transition of the age of Pisces and the axis of the world as it is changing its direction, and life on Earth is changing, and the paradigm is changing along with that, and at the base of the new paradigm is this other type of sacred geometry. And so that is nothing to do with me. I'm just understanding this as far as I do. What I can do, and this is the way I see it as my function in this life, is I can smoothen the transition. I can help people make that transition, because if I can help more people understand that the way things have been going is not the only way things can go, because this is what is holding many people back from letting go of the old paradigm. And so what I see is that it's practically a universal feeling that is often subconscious, but within everyone in this paradigm shift, that we're all in this together, and we're all feeling that the system doesn't have a future, it's making us unhappy, it's making us unhealthy, it's destroying the world, it's destroying nature, resources are finishing, the financial system is collapsing. Everywhere you look, if you look into the details of it, there's actually no future for it to continue in the way it has so far. And many people see this, and this makes many people unhappy or try to ignore it, and drugs can play a role in that to help you in ignoring it, or to suppress the feelings that we have about that, to suppress depression or anxiety and these kind of things. And so many people are having trouble with the existing paradigm and living it. However, many people still believe that this is just the way things are. This is the only way things can be, and so they continue with doing things every day, in their work, in whatever, that are actually, in their heart, they're feeling this is not good. This is not good for me, this is not good for the world, and there's no future to this. But it's the way the world goes, this is the way it is, and they just continue doing this. And this is the trajectory of ever greater suffering. And so, where I can help, this is my mission basically, is to make more people understand that the way things have been going, although they had a function up to now, they cannot continue more further than now. And so there is no sense in holding on to that sinking ship, basically. And the sooner you let go of the old paradigm and the life that comes with it, the sooner you can jump to the life raft of the re-emerging paradigm, the recyclical power flower based paradigm, which does have a future. It's sustainable, regenerative. And so this is all I can do. I can smoothen this transition for people to understand that there's a reality to the fact that there's no future in the way we have been doing it. However, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world as we know it, you could say. And there's a whole new world that awaits us. And the sooner we let go of the old and embrace the new, the sooner our life goes in an upward trajectory, which is it's empowering, it's freeing, it's making you happier, it's making you healthier. And so this is my message. This is the one thing I still wanted to add. So, okay, thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed this story.